Chapter 1: The Most Excellent Way. The Buddha said, "To be free from the passions and to be calm, this is the most excellent way." Those who leave their parents, go out of the home, understand the mind, reach the source, and comprehend the immaterial are called Shramanas. Those who observe the precepts of morality, who are pure and spotless in their behavior, and who exert themselves for the attainment of the fruits of saintship, are called Arahats. Next is the Anagaman. At the end of his life, the spirit of the Anagaman ascends to the heaven and attains a hardship. Next is the Skridagaman. The Skridagaman ascends to the heaven after his death, comes back to the earth once more, and then attains a hardship. Next is the Srotapana. The Srotapana dies 7 times and is born 7 times. When he finally attains a hardship by the severance of passions, is meant that, like the limbs severed, they are never again made use of. Gautama Buddha is like Gauri Shankar, the highest peak of the Himalayas. He is one of the purest beings, one of the most virgin souls, a rare phenomenon on this earth. The rarity is that Buddha is a scientist of the inner world, a scientist of the spirit. That is a rare combination. To be religious is simple, to be a scientist is simple, but to combine, to synthesize these two polarities is incredible. It is unbelievable, but it has happened. Buddha is the richest human being that has ever lived. Rich in the sense that all the dimensions of life are fulfilled in him. He is not one-dimensional. There are 3 approaches towards truth. One is the approach of power, another the approach of beauty, and the third the approach of grandeur. The scientific approach is the search for power. That's why Lord Bacon said, "Knowledge is power." Science has made man very powerful, so much so that man can destroy the whole planet Earth. For the first time in the history of consciousness, man is capable of committing a global suicide, a collective suicide. Science has released tremendous power. Science is continuously searching for more and more power. This too is an approach towards truth, but a partial approach. Then there are poets, mystics, people with an aesthetic sense. They look at truth as beauty. Jalaluddin Rumi and Rabindranath Tagore and others who think that beauty is truth. They create art, they create new sources of beauty in the world. The painter, the poet, the dancer, the musician, they are also approaching truth, but from a totally different dimension than power. The poet is not like the scientist. The scientist works with analysis, reason, observation. The poet functions through the heart, trust, love, through the irrational. He has nothing to do with mind and reason. The greater part of religious people belong to the second dimension. The Sufis, the Baals, they all belong to the aesthetic approach. Hence so many beautiful mosques, churches, cathedrals, temples, like the Anjara and the Ellora. They were created by religious people. Whenever religious activity predominates, art is created, music is created, great painting is created, the world becomes a little more beautiful. It doesn't become more powerful, but it becomes more beautiful, more lovely, more worth living. The third approach is that of grandeur. The old Bible prophets, Moses, Abraham, Islam's prophet Muhammad, Krishna, and Ram, and Hinduism, their approach is through the dimension of grandeur, through the awe that one feels looking at this vastness of the universe. The Upanishads, the Vedas, they all approach the world of truth through grandeur. They are full of wonder. The universe is unbelievably there, with such grandeur that you can only bow down before it. Nothing else is possible. One simply feels humble, reduced to nothing. These are the 3 dimensions ordinarily available to approach truth. The first dimension creates the scientist, the second the artist, and the third the prophets. The rarity of Buddha consists of this. that his approach is a synthesis of all the three, and not only a synthesis, but it goes beyond the three. Buddha is a rationalist. He's not like Jesus and he's not like Krishna. He's absolutely a rationalist. Einstein, Newton, or Edison will not find any flaw in his reasoning. Any scientist will be immediately convinced of his truth. His approach is purely logical. He convinces the mind. You cannot find a loophole in him. Somebody has sent me a beautiful anecdote about a famous actor and atheist, W.C. Fields. He was doing a tour of the United States. One day his manager came into his hotel room and was shocked to see him reading a copy of the Guillotine Bible. "Bill," he said, "what the hell are you doing? I thought you were an atheist." Fields replied, "Just looking for loopholes, just looking for loopholes." But you cannot find a loophole in the Buddha. Yes, you can look for a loopholes in Jesus. There are many, because Jesus believes, trusts, he has faith. He is simple like a child. There is no argument within him. The proof exists, but there is no argument for it. His whole being is his proof, but it is not so with Buddha. You may not be at all in harmony with his heart. You may not believe him at all. You may not look at the proof he is, but you will have to listen to his argument. He has both the proof and the argument. He himself is the proof of what he is saying, but that is not all. If you're not ready to look at him, he can force you. He can convince you. He is a rationalist. Even a man like Bertrand Russell, who is an atheist, purely logical, has said, "Jesus, I can fight. With Buddha, I start feeling hesitant." He has written a book, Why I Am Not a Christian, a great and argumentative book. Christians have not yet replied to it. His argument still holds, but faced with Buddha, he suddenly feels hesitant. He is not so certain of his ground, because Buddha can convince him on his own ground. Buddha is as analytical as Bertrand Russell. You need not be a religious person to be convinced by Buddha. That's his rarity. You need not believe at all. You need not believe in God. You need not believe in the soul. You need not believe in anything. Still, you can be with Buddha, and by you will come to know about the soul and about the godliness also, but those will not be hypotheses. No belief is required to travel with Buddha. You can come to him with all your skepticism. He accepts and welcomes you, and he says, "Come with me." First, he convinces your mind, and once your mind is convinced and you start traveling with him, by and by you start feeling that he has a message which is beyond mind. He has a message which no reason can confine, but first he convinces your reason. Buddha's approach is supra-rational, but not against reason. This has to be understood in the very beginning. It has something to do with the beyond, supra-rational, but that supra-rational is not against the rational. It is in tune with it. The rational and the supra-rational are a continuity. This is the rarity of Buddha. Krishna says to Arjuna, "Surrender to me." Buddha never says that. He convinces you to surrender. Krishna says, "Surrender to me, then you will be convinced." Buddha says, "Be convinced first, then surrender comes like a shadow. You need not worry about it. Don't talk about it at all." Because of this rational approach, he never brings in any concept that cannot be proved. He never talks about God. H.G. Wells has said about Buddha, "He is the most godly and the most godless man in the whole history of man." Yes, it is so. The most godly and most godless. You cannot find a more godly person than Buddha. Every other personality simply fades before him. His luminosity is superb. His being has no comparison, but he does not talk about God because he never talked about God. Many think that Buddha is an atheist. He is not. He has not talked about God because there is no way to talk about God. All talk about God is nonsense. Whatsoever you can say about God is going to be false. It is something that cannot be said. Other seers also say that nothing can be said about God, but they do this much, that nothing can be said about God. Buddha is really logical. He will not say even this because he says, even to say that nothing can be said about God, you have had said something. If you say God cannot be defined, you have defined him in a negative way, that he cannot be defined. If you say nothing can be said, that too you are saying Buddha is strictly logical. He will not utter a single word. Ludwig Wittgenstein, one of the greatest thinkers of this age, one of the greatest of all the ages, also has said, that which cannot be said must not be said. That which cannot be said, one must be silent thereof. Because to talk something about something that is unutterably is a sacrilege. Buddha is not an atheist, but he never talks about God. That's why I say he is a rarity. He brings many people to godliness. He brought more people than anybody else has. Millions of people were brought to become godly in his presence, but he never uttered the word. Not only God, but even the soul, the self. He has no theory about it. He simply says, I can show you the way to go in. You go in and look. He says, Buddhists can only indicate the path. They cannot provide you with a philosophy. You are there. Go in and see. One man came to Buddha. He was a great scholar, a sort of professor, had written many books, was well known all over the country. Pauline Buddha was his name. He said to Buddha, I have come with a dozen questions, and you have to answer them. Buddha said, I will answer, but you will have to fulfill a requirement. For 1 year, you will have to be with me in total silence. Then I will answer, not before. Right now, I can answer, but you will not receive the answers because you are not ready. Whatever I say, you will misinterpret because you have too many interpretations crowding your mind. Whatever I say will have to pass through your mind. For 1 year, just be silent so that you can drop the knowledge. When you are empty, whatsoever you want to ask, I will answer, I promise you. As Buddha was saying this, another of his disciples, Sariputta, started laughing a mad laughter. Falling Buddha must have felt embarrassed. He said, What is the matter? Why are you laughing? Sariputta said, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at myself. This man deceived me also. I had come with many questions, and he said, Wait for 1 year, and I waited. 1 year has passed. I am laughing because now those questions have disappeared. He goes on asking, Now, bring me those questions, but I cannot bring those questions. They have disappeared. So, Pauline Buddha, if you really want your questions to be answered, ask now. Don't wait for 1 year. This man is deceptive. Buddha introduced many people, millions of people, to the inner world, but in a very rational way. This is simple. The first you have to be a receiver. First you have to attain to silence, then communion is possible, not before that. Buddha never used to answer any metaphysical questions. He was always ready to answer any questions about method, but he was never ready to answer any questions about metaphysics. This is his scientific approach. Science believes in method. Science never answers the why. It always answers the how. If you ask a scientist, why does the world exist? He will say, I don't know, but I can answer how the world exists. If you ask him, why is there water? He cannot answer. He will just shrug his shoulders. But he can say how the water is there, how much oxygen, how much hydrogen makes the water happen. He can give you the method, the how, the mechanism. He can show you how to make water, but he cannot show you why. Buddha never asks any why questions, but that doesn't mean that he is an atheist. His approach is very different from other atheists. These require you to believe, to have faith, to trust. Buddha says, how can one believe? You are asking the impossible. Listen to his argument. He says, if somebody is doubtful, how can he believe? If the doubt has arisen already, how can he believe? He may repress the doubt, he may enforce the belief, but deep down, like a worm, the doubt will go on lurking and eating his heart. Sooner or later, the belief is bound to collapse. Because it is unfounded, there is no foundation to it. In the foundation, there is doubt. And on the foundation of doubt, you have raised the whole structure of your belief. Have you watched it? Whenever you believe, deep down there is doubt. What type of belief is this? Buddha says, if there is no doubt, then there is no questions of belief. Then one simply knows. There is no need for any Krishna to say surrender, then you will believe. There is no point. If Arjuna has faith, he has it. If he has not, then there is no way to create it. Then at the most, Arjuna can play a game of showing, pretending that he believes, but belief cannot be enforced. For those whose faith is natural, spontaneous, there is no question of faith. They simply believe. They don't know even what belief is. Small children, they simply believe. But once doubt enters, belief becomes impossible. And doubt has to enter. It is part of growth. Doubt makes one mature. You remain childish unless doubt has penetrated your soul. Unless the fire of doubt starts burning you, you remain immature. You don't know what life is. You start knowing life only by doubting, by being skeptical, by raising questions. Buddha says faith comes, but not against doubt, not as belief. Faith comes by destroying doubt with argument, by destroying doubt with more doubt, by eliminating doubt through doubt itself. A poison can be destroyed only by a poison. That is Buddha's method. He does not say believe. He says go deep into your doubt. Go to the very end, unafraid. Don't repress it. Travel the whole path of doubt to the very end, and that the very journey will take you beyond it. Because a moment comes when doubt starts doubting itself. That's the ultimate doubt. When doubt itself. That point has to come if you go to the very end. You first doubt belief. You doubt this and that. One day, when everything has been doubted, suddenly a new and ultimate doubt arises. You start doubting doubt. This is tremendously new in the world of religiousness. Then doubt kills doubt, doubt destroys doubt, and faith is gained. This faith is not against doubt. This faith is beyond doubt. This faith is not opposite to doubt. This faith is the absence of doubt. Buddha says you will have to become children again, but the path has to go through the world, through many jungles of doubt, arguments, reasoning. And when a person comes back home, attains his original faith, it is totally different. He's not just a child. He is an old man, mature, experienced, and yet childlike. This sutra, the Sutra of 42 chapters, has never existed in India. It never existed in Sanskrit or in Pali, but only in Japanese. A certain emperor, Ming of Han Dynasty, AD 67, invited a few Buddhist masters to China to bring the message of Buddha there. Nobody knows the names of those Buddhist masters, but a group went to China, and the emperor wanted a small anthology of Buddhist sayings to be compiled as a first introduction to the Chinese people. Buddhist scriptures are so extensive. The Buddhist literature is a world in itself. Thousands of scriptures exist, and they go into very great detail because Buddha believes in logical analysis. He goes to the very root of everything. His analysis is profound and perfect, so he goes very deeply into details. It was difficult what to translate in a totally new country where nothing like Buddha has ever existed. So these Buddhist masters composed a small anthology of 42 chapters. They collected sayings from here and there, from this scripture and that, from this sermon and that. This book was compiled in the style of Confucian Analects because it was going to be introduced to a Confucian country, people who had become very well acquainted with the way Confucius talks, with the way Confucius scriptures were made and compiled. People were familiar with Confucius, so the Buddhist masters composed this sutra exactly along the same lines. The Analects of Confucius start every sentence, every paragraph with a phrase, "the master said." This sutra starts in a similar way. Every saying starts with "the Buddha said." In the beginning of the 20th century, scholars used to think that the original must have existed in Sanskrit or Pali. Then it disappeared or was lost, and this sutra in Chinese was a translation. That is wrong. This sutra never existed in India. As it is, it never existed. Of course, each saying comes from Buddha, but the whole work is a new work, a new anthology. So that should be remembered. And that's what makes it a good basic introduction to Buddha's world. It is very simple. It contains everything in a very simple way. It is very direct. It is, in essence, the whole of Buddha's message, but very succinct, not long and wordy as other Buddhist scriptures are. The Buddha said, "To be free from the passions and to be calm, this is the most excellent way." Buddha always talks about the way, never about the goal, because he says, what to say about the goal, it is futile to talk about it. If you know, you know. If you don't know, there's no way to figure it out before you reach it. He talks only about the way. He has not even a single word for the goal, godliness, Brahman, the truth, the absolute, the kingdom of God. No, he has not any word for the goal. All he talks about is the way. To be free from the passions and to be calm, this is the most excellent way. In this one simple sentence, Buddha's whole teaching is present. To be free from the passions and to be calm. These are two aspects of one phenomenon, two sides of one coin. To be free from passions and to be calm. You cannot be calm if you are not free from passions, and you cannot be free from passions if you are not calm. They go together. One has to work for both together. Why is man so tense? Why is there so much anxiety and anguish? Why is man not calm, collected, and centered? So many passions go on pulling you this way and that, pushing you this way and that. You are being pulled in many directions. Hence, you become fragmentary, you become divided, you become split, you lose your center, you forget completely who you are. Watch. When you are greedy for money, who are you? You are just a greed for money and nothing else. When you are angry, your ego is hurt, who are you? You are just anger, a wounded ego, nothing else. When you are full of sexual passion, who are you? You are just sexuality, libido, and nothing else. When you are ambitious and you want power, prestige, respectability, who are you? You are simply ambition and nothing else. Watch, and you will find many passions in you, but you will not find who you are. Just all those passions pulling you apart, and each passion goes in its own way. If you want money, then you will have to sacrifice other passions for it. A person who is mad after money may forget all about sex. It is very easy for a miser to be celibate. In fact, celibacy may be a sort of miserliness. You don't want to share your energy. You don't want to share your sexual energy with anybody. You are a miser. A person who is politically ambitious can become celibate very easily because his whole passion drives him in one way. A scientist who is too much into his research can forget all about the opposite sex. It is easy. If one passion possesses you completely, then you forget everything else. It is a well-known fact that scientists are very absent-minded people. Their whole mind goes into one direction, but then they become very poor also. Their field of vision becomes narrower and narrower and narrower. That's why specialization is. A greedy person becomes narrower and narrower. He thinks only about money. He goes on counting money. His whole mind knows only one music, and that is of money. Only one love, and that is of money. The people who are possessed by one passion are in a way integrated. They are not rich. They don't have many dimensions to their being. They have only one taste, but they have a certain integration. They are not split. You will not find this type of person going mad because they are already mad in one direction, so they are not split. But this happens rarely. Ordinarily, a person runs in all the directions. I have heard a scientist and a gorilla were sent into outer space together. Pinned to the front of the gorilla's spacesuit was an envelope with special instructions in it. Dying of curiosity, the scientist waited until it was the gorilla's turn to sleep so that he could sneak a peek into the envelope. Very carefully, he slit the envelope open and unfolded a single piece of paper that was inside. Printed on it was the following: "Don't forget to feed the scientist." A scientist becomes one-pointed. His life is that of concentration, and a concentrated person attains to a false sort of unity. Ordinarily, people are not so concentrated. Meditation is far away. They are not even capable of concentration. Their lives are a hodgepodge, a mess. One hand is going north, one leg is going south, one eye is looking to the east, the other eye is looking to the west. They are going in all directions. This pull and push of many directions takes them apart. They become fragmentary. They lose wholeness. How can you be silent? How can you be calm? The person who is concentrated also cannot be calm because his life becomes lopsided. He is just moving in one direction. All other aspects of his life are starved. A scientist doesn't pay attention to what beauty is, what love is. He does not know what poetry is. He is too confined by his mathematical world. He becomes lopsided. So many parts of him are starved, hungry. He cannot be calm. When you are starved, how can you be calm? The person who is moving in all directions has a little more richness than the specialist, but his richness has a schizophrenia in it. He becomes split. How can you be silent and how can you be calm when you have so many masters pulling you in different directions? These are ordinarily the two types of people, and both are uneasy, deep in turmoil. The Buddha said, "To be free from the passions and to be calm, this is the most excellent way." What is his way? Those who leave their parents, go out of the home, understand the mind, reach the source, and comprehend the immaterial are called Shramanas. This word has to be understood. It is very basic. Shramana in India, two paths have existed. One is that of the Brahmin and the other of the Shramana. The path of the Brahmin is the path of grace. The Brahmin believes that by your own efforts you cannot arrive. Your effort is so small, you are so tiny, how can you possibly know truth by your own efforts? The help of God will be needed. Grace will be needed. The path of the Brahmin is the path of grace, so you have to pray. Only when God helps can you move on the path, unless He wills it. You cannot arrive. There is no possibility for you to move alone. God is necessary. His help is necessary. His hand is needed. Unless he takes you above the world, you will be struggling in vain. So for the Brahmin, prayer is the path. The Brahmin believes in prayer. The Shramana is just diametrically opposite. The word Shramana comes from a root Shram. Shram means to exert oneself, to make effort. Shram means effort. There is no possibility of any grace because Buddha never talks about God. Buddha says, you don't know God. How can you pray? To whom are you going to pray? Your prayer will be coming from a deep ignorance. How can you pray to a God you don't know and that you have never seen? What type of communication is possible? You will be just talking to the empty sky. You might as well be talking to yourself. It is mad. Have you seen mad people talking to themselves? Sitting alone and talking to somebody? They are talking to somebody, but everybody can see that there is no one there. They are talking to themselves. In the rational approach of Buddha, a man praying to God is mad, crazy. What are you doing? Do you know if God exists? If you know, then there is no need to pray. You say that you are praying in order to know God. The Brahmin says, we can know God only by prayer, by his help, by his grace. Now this is absurd, logically absurd. You are moving in a circle. You say, we can only know God by prayer? Then how can you pray? Because you don't know God yet. And you say, only by prayer will be able to attain his grace. This is a vicious cycle. This is illogical. The flaw in the reasoning is very clear. The loophole is apparent. This is the problem with the ordinary religious person. He cannot argue. The atheist can destroy your whole argument in a second. Religious people avoid debate because they know they don't have any base from which to argue. You say, we are searching for God, and then at the same time you say, only through prayer will we be able to search for him. You don't know him yet. Prayer is not possible. And if you know him, prayer is not needed. Buddha says only through your own effort, through your own shrama, you will achieve godliness. There is no question of any grace. In a way, it looks very hard. In another way, it seems to be very, very scientific. You are alone here, lost in this forest of the world, and sitting under a tree, you are just praying, not knowing to whom you are praying, where the God is, whether he is or not. You may be wasting your time. If there is no God, then all the time that you wasted in prayer could have been used to search to find out. Buddha says, once you understand that you are lost and you have to find your own way and there is no help coming, you become responsible. Prayer is irresponsible. To pray is just to avoid responsibility. To pray is to be lazy. To pray is just an escape. Buddha says effort is needed. It is an insult to pray. So in the Buddhist approach, nothing like prayer exists, only meditation. You can meditate, you cannot pray. This is the difference between meditation and prayer. Prayer needs a belief in God. Meditation needs no belief. Meditation is purely scientific. It simply says that there are states of mind where thinking stops. It simply says there are ways to stop the thinking, to drop thinking, and to come to a silent state of mind, a tranquil, sincere state of mind. And it is that state of mind that gives you what truth is, gives you the glimpse, opens the door, but it comes only by your own effort. Each individual is alone and has to work hard. And if you miss, only you will be responsible. If you don't arrive, you cannot blame anybody because there is nobody to blame. The path of Buddha is the path of the Shramana, one who believes in his own effort. It looks very austere, arduous. One starts feeling afraid. In our fear, we need somebody's help. Even a belief that somewhere some God exists gives us relief. I have heard the seasick passenger lying listlessly on his deck chair stopped a passing steward. Pointing into the distance, he said, "Over there, it's land, isn't it?" "No, sir," replied the steward. "It's the horizon." "Never mind," sighed the passenger. "It's better than nothing." But the horizon is nothing. How can it be better than nothing? It only appears to exist. It is not really there. Nothing exists like the horizon. The horizon is just illusory. But even that, to a seasick passenger, seems to be good. It is at least something better than nothing. Belief to Buddha is like the horizon. Your gods are like horizons, mirages. You believe in them because you feel alone. You don't know they exist. You create them because you need them. But your need cannot be a guarantee of their truth. Your need cannot be a guarantee of their reality. You are in a dark night passing through a forest. You are alone. You need a companion. You can imagine a companion. You can start talking to a companion. You can even start answering as if you are the companion. It will give you an illusion that somebody is there. You can believe in the companion. You can be completely hypnotized by it. But that does not mean that you can create the companion in reality. People start whistling when they are alone. Passing through a dark night, they start whistling. It helps. It is better than nothing. You listen to your own noise and it gives you the idea that there is somebody else. People start singing. Listening to their own voice gives a feeling that somebody else is there because you have always listened to others talking. The very sound that you hear gives you a feeling that another person must be there. But Buddha says that just because you feel a need, reality has no necessity to fulfill it. Reality does not change according to your need. Your need is true, that you are alone and you would like a father figure in the sky, a God. That's why Christians call God the Father. It is a father figure. Psychologists will agree with Buddha. They say that the idea of God just reflects a need for a father figure. Every small child has a father, protective, giving a sense of security. One feels absolutely okay because the father is there. Then you grow, then you become mature. Then your father is no longer a protection. Then you know that your father is as weak as you are. Then you know your father is as limited as you are. And by you see your father is becoming weaker and weaker every day, growing old. Your trust is lost, but the need remains. You need some father figure. You want somewhere to go and talk to your father who is no longer there. Lost. You create a god, a goddess. You create a father or mother figure. It is your need. Certainly a psychological need, but this need keeps you immature. Buddha is all for maturity. He says, drop all these figures, they don't exist. And even if they did exist, this would not be the way to find them. The way is to become calm and quiet. The way is to become so alone and so accepting of one's aloneness that there is no need for anybody's grace. Become so silent and alone that you are fulfilled within your own self, that you are enough unto yourself. Then you will be calm. Then a grace will start happening to you. But it is not a grace coming from God. It is a grace spreading out from your own center. You will become graceful. Buddha sitting, standing, walking is grace personified. But this grace is not coming from somewhere else. It is surfacing from his own innermost depths. It is bubbling up from his own center. It is like a flower that has flowered on the tree. It has come out of the tree. It is not a gift from somebody else. It is growth. This is the difference between the path of the Brahmin and the path of the Shramana. On the Brahmin's path, truth is a gift, God's gift. On the Shramana's path, truth is a growth that happens to you from your own being. It is yours. Truth is not something outside to be discovered. It is something inside to be realized. Those who leave their parents, go out of the home, understand the mind, reach the source, and comprehend the immaterial are called Shramana. Now, the definition of the Shramana, who is called a Shramana, who is really a seeker of truth, who is making real effort, authentic effort to discover what truth is. The first thing, they leave their parents. Now, this is symbolic. Don't take it literally. It is symbolic and psychological. A child lives for 9 months in the womb of his mother, totally protected in such a beautiful, warm atmosphere. Never again will he be able to find such comfort. No worry, no responsibility, even for breathing. He has no need to breathe himself. The mother breathes for him. He has no worry that he will be left hungry. The mother goes on feeding him. He is so protected, so secure. Psychologists say that in a religious search, people are seeking the same womb again. All their concepts of paradise are nothing but magnifying wombs, absolutely comfortable. In the Hindu mythology, they say that in heaven there is a tree called Kapalarishka, the wish-fulfilling tree. You sit under it, and the moment any desire arises, even before you come to know that it has arisen, it will be fulfilled. You think of food, and food will be there instantly. You think of a bed, you are feeling sleepy, instantly the bed will be there. This is what the womb is. The womb is Kapalaturu, a wish-fulfilling tree. The child never becomes aware of any need. Before he becomes aware, it is fulfilled. It is absolutely automatic. But the child has to leave the womb. It is needed for his growth. Comfort alone can never help you to grow because there is no challenge. The child has to leave the womb, and the first thing the child will have to do upon leaving the womb is the basis of all survival. He will have to breathe on his own. He will have to make an effort on his own. He is becoming a Shramana. In the mother's womb, he was a Brahmin. Everything was happening through grace. Everything was happening. He was not doing anything, but everything has to come out of the womb. Every Brahmin has to become a Shramana. Buddha says through being a Shramana, growth is possible. Then the child by and by grows farther away from the mother. After birth, he will still have to depend on the breast of the mother. Then a moment will come when he will no longer depend on the breast either, but still he will depend on the mother to feed him. Then he will go to school. He is going farther away from the mother. He is becoming more and more independent. He is becoming more and more an individual. Then one day he falls in love with another woman, and he is cut off from the mother completely. That's why no mother can ever forgive the woman who has taken away her son. Never. It is impossible for the mother to forgive the woman who has taken away her son. It is a deep conflict. But a man becomes really mature when he falls in love with a woman, because then he has turned his back to his mother completely. Now he has turned 180 degrees. Buddha says that in the psychological world, many roots still have to be cut. You should become more and more aware that you have gone far away from the mother, but you have created psychological mothers. You may have come far away from the father, but then you create a father figure in heaven. God ruling all over the world, the supreme sovereign, and you call him Father. Again, you are trying to become dependent, as if you are afraid of your own independence. All these are roots. All the roots have to be cut. Jesus says somewhere, and I suspect that he must have got those ideas from some Buddhist source, because Jesus came 500 years after Buddha, and by that time Buddhist attitude had spread all over the Middle East. They had penetrated far into the middle of Asia. They had entered deep into Egypt. Jesus was brought up in Egypt. He must have come to know about these ideas, and there is every possibility that he visited India before he returned to Jerusalem to teach. There are sources that say that he visited the Buddhist University of Nalanda. He must have come to know about the path of the Shramana, because in his teachings he says a few things that have no traditional source in Jewish ideology. For example, he says, "Unless you hate your father and mother, you cannot become my disciples." Christians always feel embarrassed if you say this. What type of teaching is this? Unless you hate your father and mother, and you say that Jesus is love and he has come to teach love to the world, you say that God is love. The teaching seems to be full of hatred. Hate your mother and father. All the great teachers have said, respect your father and mother, and what nonsense Jesus is saying to hate them? He must have heard it from some sources outside of Judaism. Those sources can only be Buddhist, because Buddha says those who leave their parents go out of the home. Don't take it literally. Don't take Jesus literally either. He is not saying you should hate your father and mother. He is simply saying to cut yourself completely away from the father and mother. He is saying to cut yourself away from security. Become insecure. Free yourself from all dependency. Become independent. Become an individual. That's what he is saying. Jesus is using a very rough language, and Buddha is using cultured language. Jesus was not very well educated. He was a rough man, a carpenter's son, and the Jewish tradition is very rough. The prophets speak in fairy language. Their language looks more political than religious. Buddha was the son of a king, well educated, cultured. Their terminology is different because they are different persons, but the meaning is the same. One has to leave the parents, one has to leave the home, one has to leave the past, one has to become totally independent, alone, trembling in that aloneness, but one has to become alone. One has to become absolutely responsible for oneself, and then only then can understand the mind. If you go on depending on others, your very dependence will not allow you to understand who you are. Cut all sources, cut yourself away from all relationship. You are left alone. Now there is nobody else. You have to see your own soul. You have to encounter yourself. That is the only way to encounter oneself. Then you reach to the very source of your being by understanding the mind and comprehend the immaterial. See, Buddha does not say comprehend the spiritual. He says comprehend the immaterial. This is the difference. His approach is so rational, he will not assert something in which you can find a loophole. He will not say the spiritual, he simply says the immaterial. Ask the physicist. He will understand the language of Buddha. The scientist says by analyzing the atom, we came to electrons. Electrons are just electric particles, almost immaterial. Matter has disappeared. Only energy is there. You cannot call it matter. You can only call it immatter. And then by analyzing the electron, they have come to almost emptiness, immaterial emptiness. The physicist will understand the Buddhist terminology. Buddha reached the same point by analyzing the mind. By analyzing the mind, he came to a stage where no thought was there, simply emptiness. He calls it the immaterial. Thought is the inner material. When you disperse thought, only space remains. It is immaterial. The same has happened in modern physics. They were analyzing matter in the outside world, and they came to the immaterial. Buddha reached the immaterial on his inner journey, and science has reached the immaterial in its outer journey. But both have reached the immaterial. Scientists also will not say that this is spiritual. The scientist can only say this much, that whatever was matter is no longer there. He cannot say what is there. This much can be said, that whatever we used to think of as matter is no longer there. All that we can say is a denial. Buddha says, and comprehend the immaterial, they are called Shramanas. Now the categories of Shramanas: those who observe the precepts of morality, who are pure and spotless in their behavior, and who exert themselves for the attainment of the fruits of saintship, are called Arhats. Arhat is the highest state of no mind. The word Arhat means one who has conquered his enemies. Ari means enemy, and Arhat means one who has conquered the enemy. Who is the enemy? It is not outside you. The passions, the distractions, the desires, the hatred, jealousy, possessiveness, anger, sexuality. These are the enemies. In one way, your mind is the enemy, the root enemy. One who has conquered the mind is called Arhat. This is the highest state. One has come to above all the clouds. Have you sometimes traveling by air watched the airplane goes above the clouds? All the clouds are just below you and you are in the pure blue sky. That is the inner state of Arhat. One goes on penetrating the mind by and by. The clouds of passions are no longer there. They are left far behind and you are soaring higher and higher into pure space, into the immaterial space. This is the state of Arhat. In Buddhist terminology, what is the highest state? What Christians call Christ, what Buddha calls Arhat, what Jainis call Arihana. That word also means the same, or what Hindus call the Avatara. Rama, Krishna, that is the same state, the state of Arhat. But Buddha is very scientific in that too. He does not call it Avatara because Avatara means God descending into the world. You have to believe in God. In no way does he use any term that contains some presumptions. He uses simple terms without any presumptions. Next is the Anagamin. Arhat is the highest state next to the Anagamin. Anagamin means one who will not come again. He says, at the end of his life, the spirit of the Anagamin ascends to the heaven and obtains Arhatship. It is just below the Arhat state. Anagamin, the word means one who will not come again. Gone he will be gone. Gone he will be gone forever. He will not return. He has come to the point of no return. He is just close to being an Arhat. He has passed the clouds just on the boundary. He is standing on the threshold of being an Arhat. Maybe a small cleansing has remained in him, and that cleansing is with the body. So when he dies, that cleansing also disappears. He will not be coming back. Next is the Skirdagamin. Skirdagamin means one who comes back. The Skirdagamin ascends to the heaven and after his death comes back to the earth once more. Only once. He has still some cleansing, very faint, but there are still a few roots and he will be pulled back to another womb again. He is not absolutely desireless. The Arhat is absolutely desireless. The Skridagamin has passed beyond the gross desires, but subtle desires are still there. What are the gross desires? Desire for money, for power, prestige. These are gross desires. The desire to be free, to be calm, the desire to attain to the ultimate state of our hardship. These are subtle desires, but they are still desires. He will have to come back only once. Next is the Srotapana. The word Srotapana means one who has entered into the stream. Srota means stream, and Apana means one who has entered. Srotapana means one who has entered the stream. He has just begun his journey on the path. He is no longer worldly. He has become a sannyasin. He has entered the river. Far away is the ocean, but he has entered the river. He has started. And when the journey is begun, it will end. However far it is not so far away. The real problem is with those who have not entered in the stream. They are standing on the bank. These are the worldly people standing on the bank. The Sansayan, the Bhikkhu, is the one who has entered into the river, knows well that the ocean is far away, but now half the journey is over just by entering. Next is the Srotapana. The Srotapana dies 7 times and is born 7 times when he finally attains a heart. These are just symbolic, don't take them literally. These are just symbolic things. 7 does not mean exactly 7. It means 7. Many times he will die, many times he will be born, but his face is turned towards the ocean. He has entered into the Ganges, and the journey has started. By the severance of passions is meant that like the limbs severed, they are never again made use of. And Buddha said that by dropping the passion, he means that it is as if somebody cuts off your hand, then you cannot use it, or somebody takes your eyes out, then you cannot see through them. One who is ready to enter into the stream is one who, on his own, voluntarily drops passions, who says, I will not use them again. Remember, this is not repression in the Freudian meaning of the term. One does not repress it. One simply withdraws energy from it. Sex remains there. You don't repress it. You simply don't cooperate anymore. The difference is tremendous. When sex is there and you repress it, you fight with it. Then you don't go above it. You remain with it. If you fight with it, you are still clinging to it. And if you fight with it, you will remain afraid of it. Buddha says one simply does not cooperate with it. A sexual desire arises. What will you do? Buddha says simply watch. Let it be there. It will come and it will go. It will flicker and the mind will try to attract you. You remain watchful. You don't allow any unconsciousness. Otherwise, it will enter in you. You simply remain watchful. Says Buddha, one has to be just mindful. Then one is like a house where lamps are burning, where lamps are lit. The thieves are afraid to enter. When there are no lamps and the house is dark, then thieves enter easily. The person who has really become mindful is like the house where there is a guard at the door, fully awake, and the lamps are lit. It is difficult for the thieves to enter. They cannot gather courage. The same happens when you are aware. You have a guard. When you are aware, your house is lit with light. Passions cannot enter you. They can come by. They can roam around. They will try to persuade you, but if you simply watch, they will disappear on their own because they live through cooperation. Don't fight with them and don't indulge in them. Just remain aware, and then by and by they will drop like severed limbs. If you start fighting, you are creating another problem. Instead of being an indulgent person, you become a repressive person. The problem is not solved, only the name is changed. I have heard a doctor was treating a man who had been brought in paralytically drunk. If the patient sees green snakes again, give him some of this medicine, he told the nurse. Later on, he came back to find the man raving, but he hadn't been given the medicine. Didn't I tell you to give him this medicine if he saw green snakes again? The doctor demanded. But he didn't see green snakes, the nurse replied. Oh, no, he has been seeing purple frogs. Now, whether you see green snakes or purple frogs makes no difference. You are drunk. There are two people who cooperate with their passions, and there are people who fight with their passions, but both remain stuck with the passions. One is friendly, another is antagonistic, but both remain involved with the passions, and both are ways of subtle cooperation. One has to drop out of the relationship. One has to just become a spectator, a watcher. Once you start watching, you will become aware of layers and layers of passions. There are many layers. When gross passions are gone, more subtle layers will be found. Our whole life is like an onion. You peel it, another layer. You peel that, another layer. Fresher, younger, more alive. But if you go on peeling, a moment comes when just emptiness is left in your hands. That's what Buddha calls nirvana, emptiness, all layers gone. I have heard the guitarist of a pop group was involved in a car accident and sustained injuries to his head. On arrival at the hospital, the doctor ordered that his long, thick hair be completely cut off to enable the extent of the injuries to be seen. A nurse was detailed to undertake the task, and she set to work with a large pair of scissors. After 10 minutes or so, she said to the young man, "You went to North Lancaster Comprehensive School when you were younger, didn't you?" "Yes, I did," answered the youth. "Were you there as well?" "No," said the nurse. "I'm from London." "Well, how on earth did you know which school I went to?" queried the young man. "I have just come to your cab," replied the nurse. "Layers upon layers, and the deeper you cut, the more you will find many things that were missing for many years. You will find your cab. The deeper you go into your mind, the deeper you will go into your childhood. Many things forgotten, lost again. They are there. Nothing is ever lost. Everything goes on accumulating. When you come to a point where you cannot find anything, then you have come to your being. The being is not like a layer. The being is simply space, pure space. The being is simply emptiness. Buddha calls being non-being. He calls it anatta. Buddha says if you find yourself, then there must be some layers still left. When suddenly you come to a point where you cannot find yourself, you are, and you cannot find yourself, then you have come home, and this can be attained only by effort. This is his framework. Next, we will start moving into his mythology, the ways of meditation, the ways of inner discipline, the ways to transcend the ego, the ways to transcend all. That's why I call this series of talks the discipline of transcendence. But this is Buddha's framework. Ordinarily, you are standing on the bank. Then you cannot hope. Then you are in a hopeless state. If you become a Srotapana, if you enter the stream, that's what I call sannyas. Through sannyas, you become a Srotapana. You enter the stream, you take courage, you take the jump. It is a quantum leap from the bank into the stream. They are very close, but they are totally different. The bank never goes anywhere. It has no growth and never moves. It is static, stagnant, stale, dead. And just right there, there's the flowing river, which is going somewhere. If your life is not going anywhere, you are standing on the bank. Enter the stream and you start a journey. Your life starts changing, transforming. You begin a transfiguration, a metamorphosis, and each moment new visions open their doors to you. One day the river reaches the ocean. That day you become Arhat. You dissolve into the ocean. First Stratopana, then Skridagaman, then Anagaman, then Arhata. These are the states. It is very scientific framework. From being a worldly person, you become Stratopana, and then your journey has started. Enough for today.